It's not just the greatest intersectional rivalry, it's the greatest rivalry in college football.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Culkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube or wherever you're going to download this podcast, it's going to be free, and I'm going to appreciate your support. You can get into the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers, you can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, you can see I got a prettier face on the screen than mine. This is Pete Arbogast, if you don't recognize him, the voice of USC football, noted Trojan historian. Pete, what is this? Is this your 28th or 29th year calling the USC football game?
Well, I like to say I started in 1989, so that's 35 years ago.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry. I shortchanged you.
Well, I missed a few in the middle, but if you add them, if you add the years together, I started 35 years ago.
Gotcha. So let's just dive into this. This is the end of the season.
Yep.
Rivalry week. By the way, happy Thanksgiving to you and all the viewers and listeners. We just got done playing Little Brother. USC won that game. It was ugly. It was gutty.
Who cares?
It was a 19-13 win. USC's bowling. UCLA is not eligible to go bowling. Why does that get, well, we know that's the secondary game when it comes to USC versus Notre Dame. Why does the USC versus Notre Dame game still matter in today's era of college football?
Mark, it's as you mentioned, intersectional, first of all. So
Yeah.
It's East versus West. It's usually a different style of football being played, those two teams. I think there's a level of respect between these two teams that doesn't exist between SC and UCLA. We just hate UCLA. We have to live with them in the same city, sometimes in the same house. We went to school with these people, and it's more hostile and much worse.
They're the itch that doesn't go away.
Right. And with Notre Dame, there is a bit of respect in this rivalry. And often the national championship goes through this rivalry. Now, that's not the case for SC this year, but it well may be the case for Notre Dame.
Sure.
They've got a spot in the playoffs sewed up if they beat SC, but if the Trojans pull off an upset, Notre Dame's probably not going. And there's nothing better at the end of the season to have that happen if you're an SC fan. There's a lot of schadenfreude going on here.
No, moral victory. Clap, clap, clap. Hey, if USC can't win it, neither should Notre Dame.
That's fine with me.
Absolutely. Now, there's been a little bit of smoke, a little bit of conjecture going back to Big Ten Media Day, talk about how this series might be discontinued. Who needs to breathe that into the atmosphere? Why is that even a consideration?
Well, if you play it like the SEC plays it, and you play 3 weak sisters, you play the Citadel and Western Carolina, and you do that for your 3 non-conference games, yeah, you're going to be 3-0 in the non-con, and your league schedule is plenty tough, and that is the case with USC and the Big Ten as well. Sure. But if you don't play somebody, and for instance, Notre Dame just announced a home-and-home with Texas in 28 and 29. So it's not like they're dodging anybody. If you don't play somebody, I think at the end, when the committee's getting together, they're going to look at the Western Carolina Citadel Mercer College scores and say, why didn't you play somebody to win those games? Why didn't you do something more than a scrimmage? And so I think it makes sense to play at least one, if not 2, really good non-conference games. I can see playing Montana State, Missouri State. It's Missouri State next year. Play Missouri State, that's great. And the second one should be a Fresno State, kind of a Midland one. And the third one should be Notre Dame.
Correct.
That should never go away, ever, ever, ever. And anybody that says it should go away, they got to be taken out and tarred and feathered.
Yeah, the argument is, well, we got to be pragmatic. You've got to get to the playoffs. You've got to win the championship. Okay, it didn't seem to affect USC when they were scheduling tough out-of-conference games on purpose on their way to 11 national championships, and you didn't have 12 chances to slot yourself to win a national championship with a playoff system. So I don't understand the argument. And that's what's so confusing to me, that anybody would even breathe this, even consider it, because it doesn't make sense.
If you're good, play good teams, beat them. And
Thank
then
you.
at the end, when it comes down to SC and Alabama and you beat Notre Dame and they beat Mercer, show's over. You go, they don't.
One of the things I've kind of noticed, kind of observed, I'm a man of the fans. I like to hang out with the fans. Is there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of emotion, energy, a vibe. And I noticed it with the USC-UCLA game. But I'm starting to now notice it with the players on the team. And I'm wondering, is this a result of the transfer portal? Has the transfer portal, when your team is loaded with players who a lot of them aren't even from this part of the country, let alone played for other teams for 2 or 3 years, how do you get into these rivalries? How do you feel it?
There's a lot of mercenaries running around college football, no question. Well-paid mercenaries, I might add.
And going to get better.
I agree. Yeah, it would be lovely if you could find a team full of guys that grew up and wanted to be Trojans all the way along, and lived in Southern California, and you recruit the hell out of Southern California and own the town recruiting-wise. And barring that, you're going to have to. We were talking. You and I have talked about this, and others have talked about it. How you build a team anymore. Some coaches are building through the portal, sort of like the Duke basketball model, and others are trying to build it from scratch. We saw a couple of Big Ten teams. That's $1 in my kitty. A couple of Big Ten teams trying to build the old way, bringing them up through the high schools and trying to build your team that way. And it looks like SC is kind of in the middle of that, really. You want to get a bunch of great high school kids and develop them, but if you stink at defensive tackle, you got to go get somebody right now. Then you got to go get somebody, and that's the way it's going to work for most teams, I think. Now, how do you get them instilled with the idea that these rivalry games are a big deal? How do you talk to a kid from Vanderbilt or a kid from Wyoming? Or everybody watches the SC Notre Dame game. Let's not mistake that.
Right.
Whenever it's on TV, everybody across the country is watching that. But how do you get them into the SC-UCLA game? Well, they have a rivalry. I mean, Easton Mascarenas Arnold had Oregon State, and that's a big deal. The Civil War is a big deal. So you just paint different colors on these guys and say, these are the guys that we want to be. We want to win all our games, and if we can't win all our games, we want to win these games, and you aim at those. And I think they understand what a rivalry game is all about. They might not understand it as well as Jonah Monheim and Jalen Smith and guys that have been around, and Miller Moss, for that matter, who grew up a fan.
So speaking of rivalry games, I introduced this segment as it's not just the greatest intersectional rivalry, it's the greatest rivalry in college football. Is there any other rivalry that what's your second favorite rivalry, I guess? If USC Notre Dame is number one, what's the next game that it's going to be on your TV no matter what?
I always watched, when I was growing up, because it was the same day as SC-UCLA, I always watched Ohio State and Michigan. Because more often than not, we were playing them next.
Right.
I always watched Oklahoma, Texas, also a big game. Oklahoma, Nebraska was always a big game. Those are the ones I really enjoyed. You peek at Cal and Stanford maybe a little bit, Occidental and Pomona.
Right.
That was the oldest rivalry in the United States on the West Coast, this side of the Mississippi, until Occidental dropped football. So those are the ones that I remember watching growing up, I think, more than anything else. There are a lot of them. Alabama, Auburn, there's a whole bunch.
What about the Army-Navy game? Because
sure.
Even that is getting pushed to the side now. And that's what I'm talking about with the rivalries in college football. It's losing its mystique. It's becoming too professionalized. And
I don't care. I don't care that they're making money. Put the two teams on the field with the uniforms on. I make the argument that, when you go to a Dodger game now, there's a lot of rich guys, but they're still wearing Dodger uniforms. And when I go to an SC game, there's a bunch of guys wearing SC uniforms. There's no names on the back. And I root for the uni and the university. I don't necessarily root for the guy, although I know some of them and I have over the years known some of them. But you look back at Koufax and Drysdale aren't out there playing anymore, but I'm still rooting for the Dodgers. It's the team, it's the city, and I don't care who's out there. I want them to love what they're doing and enjoy their life and make money hand over fist and play as hard as they can for my team. That's how I feel about it.
Well, as long as this game continues to exist, I can, I could ride that train. But right now, it's, the contract ends 2026, and I don't see Notre Dame on USC's schedule past that right now.
Well, they better be. And they got a new AD there. It's not Jack Swarbrick anymore. And they got a guy that's more into it. I don't think anybody's going to let this thing die. It would be tremendously foolhardy. The fan base would be the SC fan base, the Notre Dame fan base, the college football fan base would be upset if this thing went away.
Hopefully there'll be a couple of college football wives who will be upset and make sure that it continues.
How it started, maybe it'll continue that way.
Right. Women always know best. So. All right. Let me do this. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and you can do it all in one place. So if you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you need to check out the stats. You might want to check out some live play. You might have found an extra quarter in your couch. You want to place another bet. You can do that all in one place at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Pete, we're going to talk about USC Notre Dame. That's the topic this week. Your favorite Notre Dame game, and I'm copying the question that we did over there on Inside the Trojan Huddle with Chris and Eric. But for the Locked On USC listeners, viewers, you can't use 2004. Okay, you can't use the Bush push.
2005.
Pardon me. And you can't use 1974. That was the number that was stuck in my head. Because those are the obvious answers.
Yeah.
What are your favorite USC football games? For me,
about the 74 game, I want to say a couple of things about the 74.
Sure, please.
It was. I've been to a lot of sporting events in my life.
Okay.
I'm sneaking up on 70 years old here, so I've gone to a lot of ball games in a lot of different sports. Yeah, I know. Landing wheels are down, baby. That second half was the most exciting, prolonged period of athletic competition I have ever seen and ever been a part of. I was in the stands with my girlfriend, and we had a priest behind us. Catholic priest was sitting right behind us, about one seat over and one seat back. And he had a rolled up program, and he was pounding us on the back of the head and the neck, and he was killing us. How about those Irish? He was beating with the program. In the middle of the third quarter, he tried to leave, and everybody around him and us blocked the aisle and wouldn't let him go. And we really gave it to him for a good 10 minutes before we let him go on. The usher was trying to come up and get him out of there.
Oh, that's a story.
So we were blocking it both ways.
People don't recognize that the old Coliseum before the redo, there was not a lot of space between the seat in front of you and the aisle to walk through just to get to the aisle. It was literally, you had to be skilled.
So that's something that is a long period of time, a half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour and a half. We never sat down. We never stopped screaming at the top of our lungs, which is probably why my voice sounds like this today. All right.
I'm told the only time that the Coliseum has reached that epic proportion was probably that 4-down stand against Cal in 2004.
That was good. That was good.
Otherwise, 74 Coliseum, I don't think it'll ever get that loud again.
No, and I was at the Gibson home run, and I saw the Miracle on Manchester. I've seen a few single moments of explosion in a crowd. And the only other one of those that comes to my mind is one that I saw when I was very young. I was 9 years old in 1964, and it was my first SC Notre Dame game. My dad worked for KMPC, which was the Bruin station, and they got SC tickets, and nobody wanted them. And so I went. He said, "You want to go to the game?" I said, yeah, sure. Yeah. And SC was not good. I think they were 5-4. Notre Dame was the number 1 team in the country, undefeated. And at halftime, he's up in the press box. I'm sitting by myself in the last row under the press box, and he came up after the half and said, "You want to go home?" And I said, "Let's stick around for a little bit. Who knows? Something will happen. It's only 17. It's not like 51 2 years later." And of course, SC rallied and won the game. And being 9, that's the first time I'd ever been in a crowd that came unhinged. When Fertig threw to Sherman with a minute and a half to go, people were hugging and kissing and jumping up and down and crying, and babies were being tossed in the air. And it was madness. People were going nuts. And I'd never seen it, nor had I ever heard a sound like that in person before. Fast forward to the next summer, and they put out that record album of highlights of the 64 season. Yeah. Frank Baxter and Tom Kelly. And I wore that sucker out. I mean, and I listened to the end of the Notre Dame game, and I heard that sound coming through the speakers, and it filled me, not only because I knew I had been there, but I just remembering the thing. And that's really the day, the first time I heard that I said, I wonder if I could do what Tom Kelly does. And I went to my dad and I said, how old am I going to be, or how long do I have to wait until Tom Kelly's not doing that anymore?
It was a long time.
And he said, you're going to be about 30 or 35 years old. I was 31. But I made my decision that day that's what I wanted to do. So that 1964 game was a real catalyst for me. There were others. The Frank Jordan game, coming back against Joe Montana. Montana had scored, and they had it won. And Paul McDonald led him down the field, and Jordan kicked a field goal, just like he had done the year before against UCLA. With 2 seconds to go to beat Notre Dame. Oh, my God. There's almost nothing better. You just tear their hearts out and show it to them. That one, I want to say that's 1978.
Yeah, no, well, 78, yeah, because 77 Notre Dame throttled UCLA.
Right. Oh yeah, they killed it.
That was Bigger Phelps getting them all jacked up at the Joy Center.
The first one I ever did on radio was 89, and we got Job back there. We were really good, and they were good also, but we should have won the game.
You didn't have to call the 88 game either then. I mean,
I was the first ever sideline announcer in USC radio history that day. They were the much better team, and they had lost 2 of their starters, really good players. Waters, I think, was one of them, and they still killed us.
That was the thing. 88, number 1 versus number 2.
Yeah,
you got crushed there. Somebody please tackle Tony Rice. The first
that's easier said than done.
Right, and then 89 USC, like you said, has the better team. They go back east and they just get their butts handed to them.
Oh, it was a close game. It was 28-24, and there was a third down in the middle of the third quarter, and we're moving the ball a little bit. And we threw a pass for the first down, past the down marker by about $1.50, and then he got pushed back from there. And the referee on the side spotted it back where they tackled him out of bounds instead of where his forward progress was. And we should have had the first down. Instead, we had to punt. It was a lousy punt. They got it. They scored, and it just all went downhill from there. There's been some, Jawanza Starling's return. That was super exciting. Since, in the early days, it was all Notre Dame, almost all of it. Starting in 62, it kind of turned, and it was more SC. Yeah, there was that long streak in the 90s and early 2000s. Notre Dame had it, but it's been better since then, certainly.
See, for me, my favorite 2 games, well, I have 3 really favorite games. Obviously, the Bush Push game. Mm-hmm. I was 7 years old in 74, so I was like shaking my rattle from the crib, so to speak, watching that game.
Yeah.
But 1996, I cried like a baby.
Oh, we finally got him.
Exactly. And, the greatest name in the world, Mark Cusano. I think he was sainted after that game. In fact, the next game, because USC won 3 in a row after he batted that day.
Right.
And then, obviously, there's nothing wrong with a 38-0 shutout. That was a fun game to watch. And then, obviously, when the dynasty began again.
We beat them 3 straight years by 31 points. Including back there, which never happened.
I know.
Cleared
But
the stadium.
2002, I think, was the catalyst because Carson Palmer,
He won the Heisman that day.
He won the Heisman that game. And we know what happened from that point forward with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, had a nice run. That's for sure.
Yeah, just a little bit of a nice run. So
It's always fun. I have hope. And I do want to talk about one thing about this rivalry that goes unsaid very often. Not very often, but there have been multiple times at the Coliseum where Notre Dame has come in with a national championship team and left with their hats in their hands against a USC team that has not had a good record. And there was one in South Bend in 71, the first time I ever went there. SC was 2-4, Notre Dame was 6-0, and Mike Ray threw a couple of long ones to Edessel Garrison, and SC won 28-14. So, stuff happens, and you just never know when you go to the ball yard what you're going to get.
Well, we're hoping that stuff happens this Saturday because Notre Dame is considered the favorite. They're coming in. Yeah. They're coming in, they win, and they pretty much have a guaranteed spot in the playoffs. USC knocks them out. It's a nice moral victory going into whatever bowl game USC ends up playing in.
And Mark, you look at the numbers, and they should just murder SC. Their defensive, their running numbers, they run the ball like crazy. Their rush defense, their pass defense, they don't do anything wrong, and all they do is score 50 points a game. So there's no way SC should win this game. There's no way they should win.
There was no way USC was going to be able to compete and beat Penn State earlier this year, but
had a shot.
They say you got to play the game. All right, one more. All right, now let's just talk about this game. This game on Saturday, 12:30, last game of the
Hallelujah.
Season. Yeah, right. The season hasn't gone exactly according to plan, but there's been some bright spots. I mean, USC's first 1,000-yard rusher since Ronald Jones. It looks like you've got USC's first Ray Guy Award winner in Eddie Traplisky. So there's been some bright spots, right? If we're looking for things to go, yay.
Couldn't get out of our own way there for a while. Couldn't figure out how to win a late one. 5 losses in the last minute, 19 points total.
Did you see that stat today? There are 6 teams in this country that have lost. Oh my gosh. USC has lost 5 games.
Yeah.
There are 6 teams in this country that have led in the fourth quarter.
We've led in every game.
Right. USC has lost 5 times. Those other 5 teams combined 5 losses.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. Mark, I like to think that we're building up equity for the future.
Best 6-5 team in the country.
Well, okay, sure, I'll take that, and hopefully 7-5 and 8-5. And the last 2 weeks, we've had. I mean, the one against Nebraska, we had a lot of luck. Against UCLA, it was a little tough going there for a while, but they figured it out at the end.
So why such significantly different game plans from Nebraska to UCLA? I'm talking about call playing when you're getting a little creative against Nebraska, and then all of a sudden UCLA, and you're a little more vanilla. I mean,
yeah, I never second guess coaches' calls. That's really not my job.
I know you're not. Yeah, I get it.
And I'm hired to call the plays on a radio, so that there's 2 reasons: to entertain you and to sell product, not just SB, but commercials. And I try to be as good and exciting and accurate as I can be. Sure, Sean and I every once in a while discuss the fact that perhaps we're not running the ball as often as we ought, but that's not my place. It really isn't. I can tell you what I want, but I don't.
Well, and I only bring it up because the reason why everyone was hammering, let's bring in Jade Mayaba, let's see what he's capable of doing, is because of his ability to use his legs.
Right. I wish he'd call his own number a little more often.
Absolutely. That's where I was going with it.
That's
all I was doing.
And some of it, like he got sacked a couple of times, and you could see what the problem was, because he's trying to make something happen and he's running around in circles backwards, and He's not thinking about running, and he needs to think about running a little more often. Now, I don't know if I'd want to run against this Notre Dame defense very much, but it would behoove him to take off every once in a while because it gives them something else to think about.
Well, hopefully there's no Jerry Tillery's on this team that would, cheap shot him if he does decide to take off and run.
Now.
Sorry, this rivalry gets the best of me sometimes.
I understand.
Speaking of this game, though, how is this game going to play out? You talked about Notre Dame's defense, their ability to run the ball. That was supposed to be checkmate when USC played Penn State, and USC ran the ball really well in that game, and they probably, if the ball bounces a different way, one play here, one play there, or they cover the tight end on a couple of occasions, they win that game.
Yes, exactly. Well, look, they run for 220 yards a game.
Yes.
And they don't try to sugarcoat it. They're going to run. They're going to run and run and run some more. And Jeremiah Love is really good. He's got almost 1,000 yards. But Riley Leonard is a freak. He's a running quarterback. He's not a passing quarterback. He's an okay passing quarterback. He's got 2,000 yards, 14 touchdowns. But he has run for plus 733. He's lost only 62 yards.
Yeah.
So his net is 671 and 13 rushing touchdowns. Okay, so you got a problem. You got to figure out how to stop that. And the Trojans haven't been great at that over the years, although not this coaching staff necessarily. If Leonard gets off, if he starts running around, then you're going to have a big problem all day long.
Well, obviously the answer, you're going to load the box. You're going to force Riley
Make him
to pass.
That's right.
He's not a great passer, so I don't know if that's the key to the game. It's the obvious answer.
Sure.
Do you think USC can run on Notre Dame's defense?
Well, and or pass. They got the number one pass defense around. 140 yards a game passing in this day and age.
Well, every time USC played a team earlier this year, they were the number one passing defense.
Well, and nobody throws in the. And I don't know if all these teams. There are a few teams on Notre Dame's schedule that throw the ball, but most of them are running teams. They've got a great safety in Xavier Watts.
Yes,
they've got a really sturdy. They're Notre Dame. They hit you hard. They got a bunch of big guys everywhere you look, and when they get hurt, they got a bunch of big guys to replace them. This is a really good team. They're 10-1. They spit the bit against Northern Illinois, or they'd be the number 2 team in the country right now, probably.
So this is a Notre Dame team that transcends eras. It doesn't matter. John McKay, John Robinson, Pete Carroll, the current era, Lincoln Riley era. They want to line up. They want to run the ball. They want to play physical football, smash in the mouth.
Yep.
And see who comes out on the end. I mean, this is the Marv Goose special type of game.
They're going to take their chances with you. If they can out physical you, then they'll probably win the football game. I have a note here. Let's see. Their number one hope is field position and dominating both lines of scrimmage. And if they can do that, they feel like they'll win every game they're in. Well, field position has been kind of a Trojan specialty in the last.
I was just going to say.
Duplesky's an All-American, maybe the only All-America player for SC this year. And if that swings the right way, and the problem is you can pin them, but you got to keep them down there.
Yeah,
flip the
you
field.
gotta score more than field goals.
Don't let them play field position. You play field position. You got a shot.
Can field goals win this game? Is USC's defense? I mean, statistically, you look at they give up 22 points, just under 22 points a game. Can they win a special teams defensive battle with Notre Dame?
No opponent for Notre Dame has scored more than 23 points this year. So you better score 24.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those games. Pete used to talk to me about this more than anybody. When you get close the game's close. It's a championship type game. If you know it's close and you get close, you got to get points every time you're down there. You can't go for it on 4th and 5 from the 15. You got to kick the field goal. You got to get points every time you're near, because points are going to add up, and that's what's going to that's what wins the ball game for you. Right. The Trojans have been in every game, and as we mentioned, they've been ahead in every fourth quarter, and the last 2 they've been able to win, put the ball game away. Now, I'm not comparing Nebraska and UCLA to Notre Dame, but maybe the players are young enough not to know that, and maybe they run around saying, "Oh, we've got it figured out now." Now we get in a fourth quarter war with Notre Dame, and it's 24-24, and we've got they got the ball down in their end, and we stop them and we score and we win the game. But maybe they're thinking that way now that they've done it a couple of times. I guess it's, what are the odds? Started at 4.5, it's up to 7. I'm still thinking somehow, some way, SC's going to stay in this game. They're somebody asked me earlier today, and Notre Dame's either going to pluck us like last year, and we turned the ball over 5 times and got
I was just going to say.
Okay, but 48-20. They're either going to just run us over like a steamroller, or we're going to be in the game at the end, and anything can happen. You know
what? If Michael Lance wants to dial up one of the Jordan brothers and figure it out at the end of the game.
Yeah. Where's Donnie Schaefer when you need him?
Right. So last question before we get out of here for this show. And by the way, happy Thanksgiving, Pete, to you and your family and everybody watching.
Thanks.
Between John McKay, John Robinson, Pete Carroll, and it's too soon to throw Lincoln Riley into this.
Mm-hmm.
Which era did you enjoy the most?
They're so different for me. John McKay, I was a kid in elementary and junior high and high school. Those are in some formative years when you're a fan. And, it was a good time to grow up an SC fan, let me tell you, because I ran the school. All the SC fans ran the school. It was very rare where we didn't win that game. And Notre Dame was tougher, certainly, than UCLA, but it was just a great era. John Robinson, loved the guy because we loved him as the OC when he was under McKay. Right. Now, different eras, certainly, and they had a great time. And I was at SC now under John Robinson, calling the games on the campus radio station. And I got to go to the press luncheons that we used to have on Tuesdays. And I would actually ask a question, and John knew my name, and he would say, "That's a great question, Pete." And then he would laugh and tell a joke. And the loss of John, it just still kills me, even at 89. What a great guy. And then he came back again. It wasn't as good, but it was fun, and I got to hang out in his office and watch film with him and all that. And Pete was so wide open. Got to body surf with him. Got to sit in his office with him. Talked about things that had nothing to do with football. And he would tell me little secret things that I could use on the air that, I didn't tell anybody else until we used them, including the Oklahoma game where I remember going up to him and I was going to do the pregame show. And he said, "Don't turn that on yet." And he turned to me and he says, "We're just going to kill these guys. It's not even going to be close." And I'm like, "Pete, everybody says it's going to be a great game." He's, "Do not listen to these people. We're going to kill these guys." He was so fun to work with and easy to work with. And he would be, what a great interview too. I mean, before the game, he would just tell you what he thought, and he didn't hold anything back. He was like McKay in that he would say, "Look, if we play as good as we can and they play as good as they can, we'll win. We're better than they are. We just have to play good." That was great. And I don't mean to besmirch, I had a good time with Lincoln Riley, and not as much because I don't get to know him very well because we don't go to practice. I had a good time with Kiff and with Sark and with Clay Helton. They were all good to me. And I had no problem with any of them from a professional standpoint.
Sure.
But, they're different. McKay, growing up under McKay and watching all those guys, good God, they were so good, those teams. Oh.
There was just something romantic about those teams. I don't know what it was, just because there wasn't any cable around. Yet you knew that you were lucky to get to watch them on TV. Otherwise, you had to go to the stadium to see the game. It was just a different time. But, my first time ever making the pilgrimage to South Bend was Pete Carroll's first year.
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling great in the first half. You had one of those moments. I was having a moment. There was an old lady behind me.
Yeah.
Who just, it was just going off. And then all of a sudden, Pete had to get a little greedy there at the end of the first half with that fake punt, and it just turned things around. And
we were at a game there. Paul McDonald and I were waiting in line to get some tickets for friends of his. He was still doing the color with me, okay. And Paul and I got to talking about his favorite memory there, and we talked about the game where he dropped back to pass and dropped the ball, and they called it an incomplete pass. And we were talking about it, and 2 nuns who were standing in front of us whipped around and said, "It was a fumble." Like that. It was great. That's kind of what the rivalry is all about.
It really is.
Those two nuns turning around and doing that was fantastic.
Well, tell you, everyone, if you're in town, you got a chance to get out to the Coliseum, fill it up. It's, it's the last game for a lot of these guys. And I know it's a holiday weekend. So get out there, support the team, remind everybody that this is USC versus Notre Dame. The game still matters, right?
And if you're an SC fan and you've never been to South Bend,
go.
Gotta go. Gotta go. And you go early and walk around the campus and watch the Glee Club singing and the band comes out, do the whole thing. It's just great.
The Irish Guard, it's something to behold when they come marching down.
Why don't they bring their band? I don't understand.
And they don't even
brought
do
them one time. One time they brought their band to the Coliseum and it was wonderful.
They got a local high school.
They did. They brought Notre Dame of Sherman Oaks in, and they did it once, but otherwise never again. And our band goes there. Our full band has gone there every year since 1973. And they've got a new athletic director now, the old one, Jack Swarbrick. I wrote to him and I said, why don't you let the SC band perform pregame and halftime? He said, we don't have time. I said, expand the pregame 10 minutes and expand the halftime 10 minutes. And everybody wants to see it anyway. It's one of the great moments in college sports when you get both bands out there battling. And then when they play during the game, don't play over each other. One band plays now, the other band plays later. Back and forth. Let's go. Come on, get it done.
Please. We need a little bit of tradition to stay with college football. That's all.
Bring your band out. We're ready. We'll do it like we do it in Cape Cod League. I'll take a couple of band members to my house. Mark will have a couple of guys in his house. Everybody spread across, and then game day, you can all go to the game.
We'll have a good time.
All right, man. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you, Pete, for coming on. Folks, if you don't understand how special this is, you better, because I know how much this game means to myself. I know how much it means to Pete, so that's why I brought him on. There's no better person to talk to when it's USC versus Notre Dame.
I wish I was a Trojan.
I will be back with another episode of Locked On USC tomorrow. As you know, when we end the week, every Friday, I'll have a Friday rant. I already got something in store for that. So,
can I say one more thing?
Please.
On our radio pregame show on Saturday at noon, the first segment I'd come on and I'd just say hi. Yeah. But the second segment is going to have the condensed highlights of the 74 game off the record album. And that's going to be the second segment. So you get to listen to it all. And then I'm going to have a little snippet of the very end, the Fertig to Sherman pass from 64. So you're going to be able to hear those. I'd say about 12:05 to 12:15, somewhere in there. You want to tune in at 12 o'clock straight up on ESPN LA and the Trojan Radio Network, because you want to hear those. They're really fun to listen to. Every time I listen to them, I get my hair stands up on my hand and my arms, and I get a lump in my throat, and I start laughing.
You mentioned Tom Kelly's name. I can close my eyes. I could hear it like he's calling the game on prime.
It's been an Irish afternoon. They're not going to catch him.
Okay, now when you do that, where's Super Dave? Where is Super Dave? Pete, thank you so much. Everyone,
Marky. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. Until then, everyone, you know what to do.